Hello and welcome back to Crushing Comics, the series where I fall in love with my comic collection all over again. So let's pick, we actually forgot to celebrate last time that I emptied a whole nother cube on the wall. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 20 cubes done. So we are officially 1/4 of the way through. So let's keep working. This is an unusual shape. I don't know what we're gonna get here. Let's see what to talk about today. So, have you ever thought about or heard the concept of imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is this idea that you're working on something, your job, web videos, being a comic book fan, and you don't feel like you truly belong doing that thing. And sometimes you have some valid reasons to feel that way, and sometimes it's completely an illusion. Because when are we ever truly, like, the master of a thing, really? Like, somebody can be studying something forever, and somebody could be a musician who's played their instrument for years, somebody could be a scientist with their PhD, and you're never going to know everything. So there's always this aspect of, like, wanting to reach for more. But especially when you're new to something, if you're new to a job, if you're new to a study, like, you just have this feeling that there's so much unknowable out there, and, like, are you ever going to get there? And I think that I've had that. I've had that professionally. The first time I joined a startup and in my tech job where I'm like, do I know anything about what I'm doing? I've had that about comic books. Like, do I really know enough to explain this stuff? I have this about video. Like, what am I doing here? Do I understand this at all? And the way that I've found to contend with that is a mindset from yoga. I bet you didn't tune in expecting to hear any of this stuff from me. That yoga is a practice and you're always deepening your practice, and you don't go to a yoga class and say, like, I'm gonna beat that person next to me doing a back bend. If you have that attitude, you may not be at the yoga class for the right reason. You're just trying to do your best back bend that day. It doesn't have to be the back bend that you did the day before or what you're going to be capable of the next day. You're not in competition with yourself, but you're challenging yourself to do the best version of you can do. And I think that that's a good way to kind of absolve yourself from imposter syndrome, is that, like, it doesn't matter who are you pretending to be. It doesn't matter. Just be you and be the best version of you that you can be in that day and be present. And if that turned out to be not that great, then try it again the next time. And that's great in yoga because yoga, much like being a musician and being a doctor of something, is a thing you're always progressing in. And the progression is not a linear line that just, like, gets better and better at the same amount every single time. Sometimes you can plateau for a while, but you still go and you do your best version of you. So this is really slim. Oh, this is, okay, so this is an interesting combo here. Wow, okay, this is going to be an unusual episode. So, start with one I know more about. This is called Artifice, and it is by Alex Wolfson and Winona Nelson. I love to support comics that are from LGBTQ creators and that have LGBTQ characters. It's important to me. I think if we want to see the diversity we claim we want to see in the mediums that we enjoy, we've got to show up with our money, right? And that's not just for LGBTQA in comics. I will also show up for women creators of color, because I want those stories in the world. So if I read that there's some really cool indie hit that is from one of those creators or about those characters, I will err on the side of blind buying it and trying it, because I'd rather them have my money from a blind buy and have the opportunity to make more of their product than me just, like, pumping money into the major comic book machine like Marvel or DC. Although I'm happy to give them money too. So I read that this was, like, a sci-fi adventure with a gay protagonist and theme to it. And I was like, cool, let's read it. Here's the thing. It actually looks pretty great. It's, like, got really good illustration. Oh, here we happened on some partial nudity. And it's actually a pretty interesting sci-fi concept, but it's way more of a romance book than anything else. Like, it's got some occasional action, but it's really a book about just, like, romance and kind of realizing your feelings and trying to be who you authentically are, which clearly all really relevant themes to LGBT community. But as like a comic book story, it wasn't like the most exciting slam bang comic book story. Also, I don't understand why it has to be in this different shape. Like, it makes me so angry. Not that books have to always conform, and the theme in this episode is weird sized books, but here it is against a Marvel book. Like, why? Why does it need to be wider? It's about the same height, but it's like almost an inch off. So, just annoys me, because how's it going to fit on my bookshelf? Also, Amazon had a lot of trouble shipping it to me. I got damaged ones over and over, and this one has a little bit of the back cover peeling away, but I still went with it, because this is like my 4th copy, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to read the darn book. So, yeah, I would show up for another book by Alex Wolfson. I think he has he or she, actually, I'm not sure, really cool ideas, and executed them really well here. I would show up for another book illustrated by Winona Nelson, but I don't necessarily recommend this one. If you have the opportunity to read it online on Comixology or something like that, I would say go for it. So that's one. So here's the one that I don't actually know that much about, Displaced Persons. It just looked cool. Sometimes I have that sickness where I'm like looking through the solicits and I'm like, whoa, look at that, let's get it. So it's pretty cool. It's got this like sepia tone, semi-black and white, but still colored thing to it, and it plays out across 3 different time periods in San Francisco, 1939, 69, and 99, following kind of like different, I guess, mysteries and conflicts across each of those time periods. And that's all the thing that I know. It says a riveting tale of murder, love, crime, friendship, betrayal, and just the slightest bit of time travel. Again, why does it have to be this shape? But this is a cool shape. I would rather have something that's like a really different shape, like this book that's more square, than a book that just is like one inch different. So here's the third one, and this is the thing I probably know the most about. This is a Vertigo Comics version of The Fountain, the movie by Darren Aronofsky, starring Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, and what is her darn name? I love the actress. I'm totally blanking. It's going to come to me when I stop thinking about it. Rachel Weisz. So here's an interesting. Darren Aronofsky at this time was known, I guess, for Requiem for a Dream, and not too much else in his filmography at this point. And he had this massive plan for The Fountain. And he started shooting it, and I think originally it was cast with different people. I think Brad Pitt was one of the stars originally. And it was going to be this huge sci-fi epic. It was much more a big budget. Gosh, interesting tie to Artifice. It was much more a big budget thing than it was a personal romantic movie. And even after like sets had been built and it was in progress, the movie got scuttled. I'd have to rewatch the features on the DVD to remember all the exactitudes of why, but it basically got put on the shelf and it wasn't going to get made. And so then it eventually gets made with Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz and becomes the movie that we can watch. But this is closer to Aronofsky's original intent for the story, what we would have gotten from the original movie. I haven't read the whole thing. I've read like a chunk of it, and it's definitely, I mean, it's really similar to the movie, but it is not an adaptation. It's a version of it. Much in the way that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, nothing is an adaptation, everything's a version. Here's the thing though, I know that Darren Aronofsky can be a divisive director, especially with this year with Mother, which really, really had a lot of negativity around it. I also didn't really like his Noah, but I love Black Swan and I love The Fountain. I think people get hypnotized by the marketable themes of his movies because he tends to have big stars and he tends to have some kind of like crazy theme or effects thing happening in his movies, and people see that and they think like, oh, I'm gonna watch this popcorn type of thing. And if you look at the trailer for The Fountain, it's like Hugh Jackman in space and him as like a knight in armor, and like you're like, whoa, let's go see this. But that just happens to be the kind of sci-fi trope and fantasy trope that Aronofsky plays with in his work. The work is not primarily about that, and The Fountain is really just a blisteringly emotional movie about the concept of everlasting love. Does it exist? And even though the movie plays with the idea of love in different ages and almost this idea of reincarnation, you don't have to read that as literal, which is a weird thing to say about a movie, like don't take the literal images on the screen as literal, but you don't have to. You can read it as an allegory for a love that feels timeless. It's a beautiful movie. it was one of those things that got slept on at the time, and I don't understand why. I think it was really one of my favorite movies in my collection. Yeah, just beautiful, amazing performance from Hugh Jackman, who usually has such bombast, and you don't really get to see him do subtle stuff. But this is a movie where he has to be subtle a lot. It's a lot of non-speaking scenes, it's a lot of communicating with his body, and as somebody who appreciates strong acting, I love it. So if you've never seen it, I highly recommend it, but you cannot go into it thinking you're going to see this really cool sci-fi movie. You have to go into it thinking that it's a romance within sci-fi trappings. So see, Artifice didn't have to just kind of go for me, because clearly I will dig a romance with sci-fi trappings, but I just think The Fountain is a masterpiece, and Artifice is the work of somebody early in their career, and you might, as I said, I would definitely tune in for his work again. So now we're going to shelve these, although I don't know where the heck they're going to fit because they're these weird sizes. I just guess we're going to put them in the Snoo Cube up there. So thanks for tuning into this very unusual episode of Crushing Comics, the show where I fall in love with my comic collection, both mainstream and kind of fringe, all over again. Let's do our ceremonial shelving. Tune in next time for more opening of books, and you never know what you're going to get, although you're probably not going to get anything with Superman in it, because I didn't buy any of those in oversized. Thanks so much for watching. Tune in next time.